Welcome to the Festival
of Storytellers.
I can't tell you how excited I am to be on right now. It's been a couple of weeks of excitement, getting prepared, and I've done a lot of things in my life, but this has got to be close to the top.
Thank you, Reader's Magnet, and thank you, John, for putting this forth and taking the chance on us authors in presenting this out to the world.
I've enjoyed this immensely, Joanne.
Ellie, so have I. Thank you for who you are, and thank you, Reader's Magnet. You all are beautiful, and you've worked so very hard, and we are blessed.
We are.
I thank everybody that's involved with this process, because we know writers need readers and writers need publishers. We thank Reader's Magnet and everybody that's involved. I love Reader's Magnet. They say, we share your stories with the world.
Hello, I'm Beverly Plauché, and I'm very glad to be here with you. My story starts when I met my second husband, Don Plauché. He was a very loving man, and I really enjoyed being with him. And he told me something very surprising. He said that God told him that he was going to give me $300 a month. He ended up giving me $600 a month raise. It was such a surprise to me. It was hard to believe. But I was raised in church, had all the facts in my head, but they weren't in my heart. So, and Don wasn't sure about me because I was divorced with 2 kids. So he decided to pray for 3 days about our relationship. He came over after 3 days and he said, Beverly, the whole time I prayed, God said he misses you. Wow, that really blessed my heart that God missed me. That changed my heart right away. I was a new person in God. I started thinking of things different. I started doing things different. And Don and I ended up getting married. I decided that I wanted a little bit of what Don had. So I prayed and I said, Lord, you give Don a dissertation. I want a little bit of that. And I was sitting in church one night, and there was a stranger beside me. At the end of church, I had this thought. Ask her if she needs a prayer partner. That was totally not within my thinking. But I knew it wasn't me that had the thought, so I asked her. She was from Brazil. She'd been praying for a prayer partner, and we got to be good friends. She lived with us for 6 months, and we were even all in her wedding. It was really, really a blessing. Don, through our relationship and through his relationship with God, Don wanted to have a ministry in Africa. His grandmother was from Africa, and so he just wanted to have a ministry in Africa. But we didn't have a way to go. Hello, Kimberly. So we just prayed. And hello, Beth. So we just prayed, and I didn't know what was going to happen, but I knew that God could do all things. So we went to Christ for the Nations to go swimming. And while we were at Christ for the Nations, Don was telling these guys his vision for Africa. And they said, "See those people in the water? They're from Senegal, Africa." Wow. That was hard to believe too. But when you're walking with the Lord, you always have a tendency to believe what he said. So we met them, we got to know them, and we got to go to some places with them. They had a activity at Christ for the Nations we got to go to. And the only problem was we didn't have a way to go. But we knew that God can do all things, so we didn't lose hope that we would go. I was at work one time, and I found out that they did a cost reduction program at work, where if you think of a way to save money, you develop a project, and if you get elected, you will be on the program. This man in Chicago at the Capitol office wanted me to be on the team. Wow. He ordered all the cans and he was going to do a big cost reduction. And I mean, I was surprised. And I found out that I would get $3,000 from the project. And I didn't have to do a thing. I mean, I was surprised. I didn't have to do a thing to get $3,000. And I found out that we would be able to go to Africa on the money, and we wouldn't even have to spend it all. So I called trying to make airfare, but I couldn't make airfare because it only had airfare to Europe. It didn't have airfare to Africa. But somehow in the process, we found out that we would be able to get airfare to Africa. So Dawn and I started making plans for a trip to Africa, and it was all because of God. So we packed all our stuff and we were ready to go to Africa. It was a long trip, but it sure was worth it. We met Michael in Senegal, Africa. and it was wonderful and it was glorious. And we got to meet his relatives. We got to go to church. And Don had loved French so much that he took French in college. And so he could speak a little bit of French when we went there. And he actually spoke in French. He gave a sermon. And one day we just went for a walk, and there was a monkey at this house. And I started kind of playing with the monkey, and then it kind of got a little aggravated, so I quit playing with him. And Don, he just loved people so much, he got to give this friend of Michael's his shoes. And so we got to go to Goree. Goree is a island where they would send the African slaves to Goree, and then they would send them to other places where they could sell them. And that was really, really sad. But we got to Africa, and Don didn't know where we were going to go in Africa. He just knew that we were going to do something about water. He didn't know what about water, but God showed him something about water. So we went to Senegal, and we were just walking around the town. And Michael said, "Don, I don't care where we go, but I have to be back by Thursday to go to church." So Don decided to pray right then for God's guidance in what we should do. And Michael decided to take us to he called a lady that worked in Africa on water projects. So we got over there and we told her that we were interested in doing something with water. And she called 3 different missionaries: Assembly of God missionaries, Baptist missionaries, and the last place she called was a district pastor who worked among the different tribes. She called them, and he took us to this village that had tribe members. It had a school. They were even building a bathroom, and they even had a little well. So that showed that God was working with them. Then they took us way back. They took us way, way back. And on the way, they had big, big trees, and they buried the tribe leaders in those trees. Who would have thought that? When we got to the back tribe, Joseph started teaching us about if God takes care of the sparrow, how much more will he take care of you? And then they told us they walk 4 miles every day to get water. That was really heart stressful, Lord. And Don even started crying because he was so upset about it. After we got through with the lesson, We went to a Finnish Lutheran hut. They weren't there at the time, but they made Wava brought us crackers and cheese, and later on, the people brought us fish. I was so hurt by that because they were bringing us their only food. We stayed in Africa for 3 weeks. So they gave us some bishop leaves, which you could make an actual juice with it, and it was just really a hard lesson, but a good lesson. Our trip to Africa was well worth it. When we found out that they were going to build piping, but it wasn't going to make it as far as Umbuktur, but then they found out they would make it to Umbuktur, so Umbuktur got their water. What a blessing. Well, it was time to leave, and our trip was really led by God. He was with us every step of the way. He always helped us know what to do. And Michael was very religious too. So we got to learn from each other about God. So on the way home, we were over on our luggage, and I went, over on our luggage? We weren't over when we went. But we were then, and I only had $27 left. And I looked around, and there was a Visa stack. And I couldn't believe it. I got to charge my luggage on the Visa. And then we went to we got to the last place before you check into the airplane. And the man sitting at the table said, airport tax, $40. We didn't have the money. And David had already left, and we were just totally short of money. So we backtracked and started talking to different people, and nobody could help us until we got to the last person. We told them our situation, and then he went and talked to the person at the tax table, and he let us on the airplane for $27. And that's all the money we had, but that's all the money we needed. So I'm very thankful to God for getting us through the whole trip. When Bradley we had a son together. And when Bradley got to be 13 years old, his father always wanted him to go hunting. The best thing on our trip was watching God. Like when Don wanted to ask God, what do we do now? And God said, pray, and Brad prayed, and he showed us what to do. So it was all those times that God came into the situation and told us what to do. So Don and Bradley ended up going hunting. And it was Thanksgiving, and it was the last day of Thanksgiving. And Brad and Don were going to go on one more hunt. Thank you for your blessing. They went on one more hunt, and Brad thought he was behind him, but he was in front of him. And Don moved, and Bradley shot him, and he killed him. And that was very, very traumatic and devastating. But I never got mad at God. I never got mad at Bradley, and I never got mad at Don, Bradley, or God. And God was so good to give me faith to know that God would give me the answers to everything I needed for Don's death. And Bradley, I couldn't talk to Brad about it because I would cry. And Bradley, um, I decided to have Brad take hunting lessons. And he came home and he said, Mom, I used to feel guilty, but I don't anymore because we weren't wearing orange. And that was such a blessed thing to happen. And so, but Bradley, he was really confused about God. He was really confused about everything. And he went somewhere driving. Oh, I got him into Sam Houston. And so I was so happy that he's in college and he's doing good. And he got stopped by the police and he had marijuana in the car and he got kicked out of school. And that was very sad with him being confused about God and church and just being confused altogether. He moved back home and he'd been home 2 weeks. And he walked up to me and he said, Mom, I used to feel good. Oh, he said, Mom, God gave me a joy that I only have from God. Wow, God gave him joy. You know, to have faith, you don't really have, God gives you the faith that you deserve and you just want to have that faith. And as you pray and ask God to give you the faith, he will surely do it. So when Don first died, God gave me a lot of faith. And I was very thankful for that. And I've enjoyed that faith all my life. So Don Bradley had gotten saved through God. He met a good, godly girl. And they got married. So Bradley has become a faithful person to God. He loves God, he worships God, and he's very happy to have God by his side all the time. And when after Don got killed, I became closer and closer to God. And God sure does find a way to help us. He's helped me along the way all the time. So at my church, I met this lady and I was telling her about Africa. And she said I got too close to her and she didn't want to have any part of me. But we went to a snow ski trip. And when we were going home, it was real bad weather and everything. So we stayed over in a hotel, the men in one room and the women in one room. And we, Kathy and I ended up laying at the same bed and started talking. And we'd always wanted to lose weight, always, always. So we decided to get together once a week, talk about God, go out to eat, and have a good time. And we did exactly that. We enjoyed our time together. We enjoyed talking about God. And I found out that through my experiences with God, I wanted to tell other people. So I started talking. We'd go to a restaurant, and at the end of our supper, I would just start telling the waiter about God. And since God knew God, since Don knew God, I started with, God knew God. He knew how to talk to God, and he knew how to hear from God. And so after I told my story to the man, and Kathy knew a lot about the Bible, so she would tell the story about the Bible. At the end of the talk, that man wanted to be saved right in the restaurant in Cheesecake Factory. I prayed for his salvation. What a blessing. And God has done that for me for 30 years. So what could have been a bad situation turned out to be a wonderful, glorious time when I can see my husband again in heaven. And that is such a wonderful opportunity to get to talk to other people about God, our Savior, and so I have everything to be thankful about, to be thankful to have God as my Savior, God as my answers my prayer for me, for Brad and Dawn and my daughter Krista to always help me out. And my daughter Krista, she wanted me to, I lived about an hour and a half from her, and she wanted me to move close to her. Well, I didn't want to. And she asked me about 3 times, and then I said, God, if you want me to move, I will. I don't want to, but I will. And 4 days later, I was just walking through the house, doing my thing, and I had one thought from God: move. I called Krista that day. I said, I'm moving. She helped me move. She got me a house for no money. I got it free from a friend. And isn't that just like God to provide for us things that are totally free, and He gives us because He wants to, and He loves us, and He always cares about us. And goodbye. I enjoyed our conversation. And here's my book, Walking with the Lord. What a way to go. It's just a little book, but it gives me all that I need. Goodbye.